Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies I have just seen while I'm driving home from the theater. And, okay, before I get into this review of the film, I have to talk about this one thing. And I understand that this is a thing that probably only bugs me. So, and it really doesn't speak to the quality of the film or anything. It's really such a non-issue, but to me, it's irritating. And I have to say that I think this movie has the most boring poster that I have seen in a long time. It's just like, you know how people complain about the Marvel movies? All, their posters are all the same. It's all a big collage of the faces of all the actors in it, every single one of them. And that is kind of true to a certain extent. But this one, it's like almost 2/3 of the poster is just red with the title, and then it's just like Megan Fahey's eyes, and she's holding the phone and kind of looking off in the distance. The background is white. It is just boring. It's just boring to me. And okay, I understand. We're living in a different age. We're living in a different age from when I came up going to the movies, and I'm sure that people will tell me that movie posters and album art and book covers, they don't need to be fancy or interesting anymore because streaming and all this other stuff. I'm sure people will give me some kind of explanation as to why people just don't care about movie posters anymore. But you know what? I care. I really do. This is, I know this might be an experience only for me. Maybe other people remember this. But I remember going to the movies as a kid. And one of the things I used to look forward to the most from the entire experience of going to the theaters was not just getting there and watching the trailers, but walking through the theater itself and looking at all of the posters. And I can still remember the posters that filled me with excitement for a movie, the posters that terrified me. I remember some of the Child's Play posters really freaked me out as a kid. And even now I look at them and I'm like, ugh. And yeah, I think a poster just creates atmosphere and sticks in your mind about a film. So yeah, I know that we're living in a different age. I know that, but I don't know. I still think that things like movie posters and album covers and book covers and all these things, they're still important. They're still important. And so I realize I've gone off on a tangent here, haven't even started talking about the movies. I've been complaining about the poster. But I think there's a number of reasons. Number one, like I said, I think it's a part of going to the movies and enjoying movies that we've let go. And I would love it if we could get it back. I also think that it speaks to the studio's interest in the film if that's the best their advertising department could do. It speaks to the fact that this is clearly not a film that is a high priority to the studio, because they're just like, well, there, get it out, we're done, hooray. And it, like I said, a good poster can get you amped or can give you some feeling as to, what the movie is. And I guess this just puts it in your head that it's going to be a fairly lackluster and really unremarkable piece of cinema, which I guess in that instance the poster is right on the money. So Drop is a movie that exists. Good night, everybody. No. I gotta tell you, this is one of those movies that is kind of hard to formulate reviews about, because I just don't know what to say. It's just kind of there. You know, this is one of those films that I classify as, yes, this is a motion picture. It delivers what it promises. There are pictures, and they do in fact move, and yeah. All right, I'm being unfair right up front. Let's backtrack a little bit. Okay, so what is this film about? So we have in this movie a young woman, a domestic abuse survivor, played by Megan Fahey, who I believe it's supposed to be a year or so after a very traumatic incident with her late husband. She's finally going out on a date again with a guy she met online. She meets him at this fancy restaurant really high up in Chicago, and as the dinner is getting started, she starts getting very weird text messages that start being airdropped to her. And at first they're just kind of spooky memes, you know, like the kind of troll would just kind of paste on your wall or post on your wall of any of your various social media accounts, you know. And it's like, okay. And then the drops start taking a sinister turn when they tell her to check her security cameras at her house. She does, and there's a man in her house with a gun who is going to threaten her sister and her young son. And from there, the drop messages begin giving her instructions of things she's supposed to do, ultimately telling her to kill her date. So there you have kind of the setup. And I guess the other thing to mention is that because drops only have a certain distance they can be sent from with this app, it has to be somebody in the restaurant. And that plays out as they try, as you know, the instructions get more and more specific, things that only someone watching her and listening could be aware of what she's doing. So now we have this instance of a person alone in a high stakes, stressful situation, trying to figure out how to get out of it, trying to find ways to alert people, trying to outsmart an unknown assailant and discover who they are and why they're doing this, and so on and so forth. So on the surface, none of this is a bad idea for a movie. The film that this most kind of reminds me of is a film I'd be very surprised if anybody remembers. It's called Phone Booth from 2002. And it had Colin Farrell in it. I would also be surprised, not just because it's kind of an obscure film, but because I don't know if anybody even has the faintest idea what a phone booth is anymore. But it has kind of the same setup of a relatively normal thing that you're used to seeing or used to interacting with on a daily basis that suddenly turns very sinister, and suddenly a person is trapped in a situation they can't wriggle out of. So I give the idea, the basic idea, a lot of praise, and I do think that there are some genuinely suspenseful moments in this. There are a couple moments where the unknown assailant tells her that she needs to get the SIM card out of her date's camera. And, you know, she's trying to look through the SIM card, trying to get some clues as to what's going on. They don't want her date to find out, so you can see where he's at. He's coming back. you know, and it's like, and you find yourself going, just get the card, go. So it does succeed in creating a fairly tense atmosphere. I also do not discount how difficult suspense is, especially in this day and age. In this day and age, a suspenseful movie is almost anachronistic. You don't see a lot of pure suspense movies that are just there to kind of raise the blood pressure. Not horror movies. There's a very clear difference between a suspense and a horror film. We have a lot of horror films, a lot of different flavors of horror films. And this movie does come to us from Blumhouse, which shows. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But suspense is different than jump scares and gore and, you know, monster hunting. It's different from that, you know. And creating the proper atmosphere in this day and age, I think, is very, very difficult for people. Let me give you an example. I feel like this film has a problem with overshowing and trying to use too many modern film tricks to get their point across. So, one gimmick that they use is every time she gets a text, the words appear on the screen kind of next to her or beside her or whatever. Okay, that's a neat way to show us the text without having to have us, you know, read it off of her phone. And it also allows us to see her facial expressions and reactions to each new message. Okay, that's fine. But there's this moment she goes into the ladies' bathroom because she's instructed to. And this is where she realizes that the person has cameras everywhere and that they've somehow cloned her phone. They know what she's doing. And this is the first time she really feels alone. And the shot has her sitting on this, you know, little centerpiece in the middle of the bathroom. And everything goes dark around her. And there's just this light shining down on her. And, you know, it's this crane shot from above. It's just overly done. And I think the same feelings could have been communicated via a different camera angle or really zooming out on her in the bathroom by herself or something to that effect. I think the film is trying too hard to make the film look modern because I get the feeling that they're afraid that people would find the movie boring. I get the instance that, or not the instance, I get the instinct that I think there were some production notes coming down from the studios on this movie. I really do. Because on the one hand, there are more subtle scenes that work really, really well. But then certain things then become over-directed or overhyped, and I get the feeling that there was somebody from the studio going, oh, the audience is going to be bored. The audience is going to be bored. You got to hype it up. You got to do something visual, and it just, as opposed to creating audience immersion, it breaks that immersion. It makes us very aware that we're watching a movie. I think this film could have worked if they had just played it like almost like an indie film, where you don't have access to all of this technology and you just have to do it with the dialogue and the acting and basic point and shoot directing. Using the camera in creative ways because that's all you've got. And I have a feeling that's maybe what they were trying to do, but then notes started coming down from the studio that you had to amp it up and you had to, keep the audience engaged. Like, they were worried that the audience is too stupid to be surprised or to be held in suspense. Which, I guess there's evidence for in some cases, but I also think it's not trusting your material. Because I don't want to make it sound like there's nothing good about this movie. There are aspects of it that are very well done, and I think where that begins and ends is in the performance of Megan Fahey. One of the things this movie does well, or smart, or whatever you want to say, is there are no recognizable names in this film. And I think that's a good thing. Trying to create this kind of slice of life, this could happen to you kind of suspense. If you had a big name actor, or even somebody that the audience just recognized from a name, even if they haven't done anything in a while, I'm just going to pull a name out of the hat, like Julia Stiles, or what is her? It just went right out of my head. I was going with Goldie Hawn's daughter, and my brain her name just went right out of my head. Like, even someone like that who maybe isn't as well known, but we still recognize the name and the face, I think it takes away from that every person appeal. So getting reliable character actors to populate your film is a smart step. And in the years I've been doing this, I've seen a number of films like this where you don't have the biggest names and you don't have, your first round draft picks in terms of actors. And this is a chance for a young character actor to kind of step up and establish themselves. And I've discovered that there's two ways you can go about this. You can have someone who really takes to the challenge and really uses this opportunity for all it's worth and really pushes forward and, gives it everything they got. And you've got the ones who show why their names are not often included above the title. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. Megan Fahey is definitely the former, because I think she really took this opportunity, and what an opportunity it is, because the entire emotional thrust of this film lives and dies with her. If we, the audience, do not sympathize or connect or identify with this character, then your entire movie is out the window. And I think she really, really does a great job. There are several really great dialogue scenes where the movie does kind of slow down and just lets us kind of get to know the characters a little bit and what they've gone through, who they are, what their worldview is. And those are really well acted by all parties, but Megan Fahey is definitely the lead. And at the same time, she also has to sell us on the panic. She has to sell us on the fear and the mystery. And a lot of times that's got to be done in scenes where she's acting opposite a phone with a text message coming through. So you've got your acting partner. It's not even a green thing with tennis balls on that they're going to digitally create a character later. It's the phone. You got to look at that, react. You got to have chemistry there. And I give her all the credit in the world. I think she does a really good job. This is a great, this is a great reel for her to kind of show what she's capable of and how she can anchor a film and be its emotional center. The rest of the cast is okay. Nothing really remarkable. Again, I think that's kind of the point. You don't want anybody really being they stand out so much they distract from, what's supposed to be the core hook of the film. But yeah, aside from her, there's really nothing that stands out or is really notable to discuss. Where the big problem comes in, this is the big illustration of what I was originally saying. And the idea that this movie either doesn't know how to be a suspense or it got, majorly interfered with from the studio, and again, I don't know which one it is in the climax. So, after a good long time of jumping through these hoops and being terrorized, Meghan Fahy finally has a showdown with the person who has been pulling the strings. She finds out why, and and of course there's a big kind of action-y scene in the restaurant with, where it's raining cinematic payoff, and where a gizmo that was used earlier in the film or introduced earlier in the film suddenly comes back.
Oh yeah, it's raining cinematic payoff.
So yay, the day is saved. But then the movie feels the need to tack on this extreme action finale, where it turns out the killer is still in her house, and she's got to jump in a car and race back to her house and have a fist fight with the killer, and all of this, that, and the other thing. And, again, the movie's kind of over. We know who done it. They've pulled the mask away. We know it's Old Man Willis.
Why, it's Zeb and Zeke.
Uncle Stewart.
Like in person.
It's the curator, Mr. Wickles. It's Carl, the stuntman.
But they feel like they have got to put in this heavy action finale out of nowhere for no real discernible reason. And on top of that, and it really did have me scratching my head, because I admit that at certain points in this film I was kind of fading out. But so she's there and she's fighting the guy who's in her house, who's wearing a black ski mask and all of that. And right before the big climactic moment, he's got her dead to rights, he's gonna shoot her, he pulls his mask off to reveal some guy we don't fucking...
Our mystery guest is... Who's that?
Yeah, the movie kind of plays it like a big moment, and I'm like, who is this? Why is this important? Okay, all right, movie's over, hooray. So yeah, this big action sequence at the end, it just feels really, really tacked on and unnecessary for the tone that the film is trying to create. Again, I feel like there is this battle going on either with the director or with the studio or something, where it's like, I've got to put these more, intense moments in there, or else the audience is going to lose interest. Which, in a way, they're right. This is not the most captivating film I've ever seen. And making a movie like this captivating and interesting, it is a challenge. And, I think this film fares better than most, but it still misses the mark. It's just, yeah. As I've said, there's nothing really inherently wrong with this film. It's not bad in a traditional sense. It's not offensive or just completely incompetent or, just jaw-droppingly stupid. It's not that. It's clearly trying. It's clearly, doing its very best to make the most out of this very kind of interesting setup. But when all is said and done, what's there is just kind of there. There's nothing really to talk about, not a whole lot to really recommend, and not a lot to hate either. It's just, like I say, it's just there. It is a movie that exists, And like I said, if you're looking for something to watch and you see this, you can do worse. There's worse stuff out there, but there's also a lot better out there. So, yeah, unfortunately, I think this one is kind of regulated to that and the rest kind of classification of film. So yeah, that's my opinion. Anyway, so let's wrap this up. So, final grade for Drop. I have to go C- on this one. It just doesn't do it. It just doesn't hit the mark. So yeah. I don't know what else to say. So let's not say anything. Let's wrap this up. Alrighty. So there you have it. So thank you for coming along. Thanks for listening. Thanks for enjoying these. I appreciate every week when I post one of these and seeing how many listens I've gotten. So thank you to the people who are listening. I really do appreciate it. Glad you're enjoying them. Take care of yourselves, and as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.